Hello Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We talk about all manner of dorkly things here, so whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes, we probably have a playlist about it. Feel free to check us out. Today is another in our Dork Lord of the Rings segments. I thought today we would talk about Shelob and her actually more impressive mother. So, what do we know about Shelob? Okay, we are first introduced to Shelob in Lord of the Rings through Gollum. Gollum is leading Frodo and Sam through Cirith Ungol, the Pass of Spiders, and his intent is to basically lead them straight to Shelob, let her eat Frodo and Sam, and he will take the ring back off of their corpses. It's not a bad plan, actually. Doesn't quite work out. I guess lucky for Middle-earth. But, so Shelob manages to incapacitate Frodo, stings him, paralyzes him, wraps him up in her webbing to eat for later, right? Keep him fresh till it's dinner time. Then Sam gets in a fight with Shelob, and he succeeds in grievously wounding Shelob because he has two weapons at his disposal. One, he manages to grab Sting, the sword, from Frodo, and basically it's the body weight of Shelob. Shelob tries to body slam him, and in the process, her weight drives into Sting, and it causes her great harm. Sam also has the Phial of Galadriel, which you remember is a little glass that has waters from Galadriel's fountain in it, and it casts a very bright light. In fact, the light it casts is light that is held from the great trees. And I'm going to bring this up because it actually really comes back to Shelob's mom. It's kind of a cool little tie-in. But so put a little pin in that. I'll bring it back for later. What are the two trees? Why do they have light? Anyway, but this light blinds Shelob. So Shelob is both blind and grievously hurt by Sting, and so crawls away in agony. There's even a moment there where Sam puts on the ring to hide, and with his increased senses, because he's got the ring on, he can actually hear Shelob suffering, kind of moaning in the dark as she crawls off back to her lair. Now, Tolkien doesn't say whether she survived or not. She could have starved to death if she was blind and seriously hurt. But she is a very powerful being. Could have survived, and the destruction of the ring would not have necessarily destroyed Shelob. So, because she predates the ring. Anyway, Shelob obviously a very powerful entity. She is the daughter of Ungoliant. I'll bring up Ungoliant here in a second because Ungoliant's story is very interesting, very cool as well. But basically, at the time of at the end of the First Age, the War of Wrath, when Morgoth is finally taken out, the spiders, and this being one of them would be Shelob, escaped the destruction that was happening around them, and she came to Middle-earth, went up into the mountains near Mordor, and that's where she survived. And she bred with some of the other spiders in the area, and those spiders kind of basically became like the spiders of Mirkwood that we know, those giant spiders. And she fed off of, elves and humans and eventually orcs. So she arrived, Tolkien mentions that she's there before the first brick of Barad-dûr is built. So it is early in the Second Age, she arrives in Middle-earth. Over time, this paths, the first tower of Cirith Ungol is built by men. So it's kind of part of Gondor, basically. But it's still called, I think, the Pass of Spiders, the Cirith Ungol at that point. So it suggests she was there when they were trying to build this tower. I'm like, let's build a tower next to the incredibly dangerous giant spider. That'll be fine. So they also, because, the pass led straight to her and then her webbing, well, they built little side tunnels to try to avoid her. And so that's how you could get through the Pass of Spiders without getting through Shelob if you knew the right way to go. It was always one of my thoughts originally on in Lord of the Rings was, boy, Frodo just walked right into a trap. My thought was, well, hey, where else was he going to go? Like, he couldn't go through the Black Gate. It was basically, if you want to get into Mordor, you got to go through Cirith Ungol. So, duh. But the answer to that is, if you knew the way to go the side tunnels, and you weren't being led by someone who's trying to get you caught by Shelob, you could do it. You could figure out a way through the pass without, having a giant spider attack you and spin you up in webs. This relates back to the video I did last time, where I mentioned at one point in the Third Age there's a great plague that sweeps across the land. And it's that great plague where the number of people in Gondor, the population goes way down. The Tower of Cirith Ungol gets left unattended. Over time, that's where the forces of Mordor and the orcs kind of move in and take control of that area. So Sauron is aware of Shelob. She takes a lot of orcs for her food. He starts basically giving her prisoners sometimes as like, hey, here's somebody who has disappointed me. I'll sacrifice that person to Shelob. So he kind of has a working relationship with her. He appreciates the fact that he's got this really intimidating guardian to this Cirith Ungol, the Pass of Spiders, which is a kind of a shortcut into his lands. So it's like, all right, fine, I'll let Shelob stay there, and this will be great. And in fact, I believe he even calls her his cat. There's a reference to that. So it's a weird little pet to have, but yes, his pet cat Shelob hangs out. Cirith Ungol eats a bunch of folks, many of which he provides her for sustenance. That's basically the extent of Shelob as we know her. So let's go back then to her mom. Okay, so we're back actually before even the First Age. So way, way, way back, thousands of years ago. We're not even sure exactly what Ungoliant is. Like, Ungoliant is not like a Maiar spirit, we don't think. The conventional wisdom is that she was something else, something other, perhaps created from the darkness that was around Arda back in the day itself, a manifestation of the darkness. Originally, she was on the side of Morgoth, was a servant of Morgoth, but they split up. She went her separate ways at some point. I did a video about the lamps back in the day and how Morgoth destroyed them. If you want to go check that out, I won't belabor the point on the lamps, but basically, originally, when the angels, we'll call them, the spirits of the Valar wanted light, they created these two giant lamps to light their continent. Morgoth, the Satan, basically, the outcast angel who was looking to get vengeance on the other angels, came and knocked down the lamps, so destroyed the light source. There was a cataclysm as well. There was a lot of problems going on, but eventually the Valar kind of resettled, and they created two new light sources, trees. So these are the trees of the Valar. There were Telperion and Laurelin. Kind of a male-female. I think the male was Telperion, the female was Laurelin. Telperion is silver, gives off a silver light. Laurelin, gold, gives off a gold light. And so they're the precursor to the sun and the moon. I'll just give you a spoiler alert. Basically, after they get destroyed by Morgoth and Ungoliant, some of the Valar, particularly Yavanna, who's the nature spirit, she manages to save a flower from Telperion and a fruit from Laurelin that flower and fruit become the sun and the moon. So that's, the origin of the sun and the moon in Tolkien's world. So these trees were very, very valued, sacred things. So, okay, Morgoth has destroyed the lamps. Valar rebuild. They've got their trees now. Yavanna sang them into existence. And the trees light their lands. Morgoth wants to take out the trees. So, he goes and he finds Ungoliant, who has been hiding out in this chasm. Basically, Ungoliant feeds off of light. Hates light, but needs it. And can then take the light in for sustenance and then spew out these webs of darkness. Can kind of translate it into darkness. And also, taking in light makes her grow. So she's a very she's described as a monstrous spider to start with. So we don't know how big she is, but she's pretty big. I always think of her as the Lolth, demon queen of spiders in the D&D context. But she's about to get much, much, much bigger. So she's huge. Also, she didn't begin as a spider. As I mentioned, she was maybe the darkness manifest as some kind of a very powerful spiritual form. And she chose to take the form of a spider that casts webs of darkness. Okay. Morgoth finds her. She's at first worried that Morgoth's gonna, attack her because they've split up at some point in the past. But he's not there to fight. He's there to get allies. And so he promises her, hey, if you come with me and help me destroy these trees, I will let you drink their light. She's still a little unwary because she's like, hey, the Valar are powerful. They're gonna, they could kill us both. He makes more assurances. He's like, look, whatever you want to take in, consume as a result of the spoils of our victory, you can do. So with that assurance, she's good to go. Morgoth and his forces, and including Ungoliant, attack. She spins her webs of darkness to hide them on their approach, and so they are protected from the Valar who might be trying to find them. And they get to the trees. Morgoth has a giant spear. He wounds the trees. They start to basically drain sap, the light of their trees, and Ungoliant starts consuming the sap, consuming their light. She's growing and growing. Not only does she drain the trees of their light, but she also poisons them as well. She has a poison bite. And so she poisons the trees so that they can't, basically they die for good. Right? They're not going to regenerate or anything. So she consumes all the light from these trees and is now gigantic. Also, so they escape. They're now, the Valar are like, what did you do? And they're, so Morgoth's like, let's get out of here. So they escape from Valinor. They get back to that version of Middle Earth before there was yet another cataclysm. But so pre second cataclysm Middle Earth. And when they are roughly safe, basically Morgoth's trying to get back to Angband, his old fortress. At some point, Shelob demands more light to consume. So he has taken several gems from the Valar. He gives them up. She consumes them, gets even bigger. Now, Morgoth himself is huge. He's described as being much taller than a typical mortal man. Maybe as much, like 40 feet tall, that kind of thing, like a huge guy. And he is getting intimidated and scared by the size of this giant spider Ungoliant. So she's got to be just, I don't know. I mean, you can imagine she's 70 feet? I don't know, just some giant monster. She then demands the Silmarils. So Morgoth has taken those. He's taken the Silmaril gems. The Silmarils, the most sacred items in the world, and she demands them. She wants to consume them, because of their light. He refuses. she attacks him and spins a bunch of webs to, entrap him and mesh him in darkness, and is making a very legit attack on Morgoth. He screams in pain. That scream alerts the Balrogs that are living in, basically hiding out in Angband, and they come to his rescue, and they fight off Ungoliant, and she retreats, and he lets her go because it's like, whoa, we got to regroup here. But that scream that he made, that scream of pain, made that area was called Lemoth, which is basically a reference to this moment. And supposedly, anytime anybody would go, if you just yelled in that area, the echo that you would get back would be the screams of Melkor, Morgoth, coming back at you. That's how much he scarred the the psyche of the land with this scream of pain from Morgoth as he was attacked by Ungoliant. So yeah, she was incredibly powerful, right? She was able to drain the trees of their light, putting the world into darkness, was able to one-on-one take on Morgoth. Probably could have won that fight if it was just a one-on-one fight and didn't have a bunch of Balrogs backing Morgoth up. And so her fate is somewhat unknown. What Tolkien wrote, I believe, was that eventually she consumed herself. So there was nothing left to consume, and so she just started eating herself and died. Not before she had bred with some other spiders that then became basically Shelob's brood that then, as I mentioned, at the end of the First Age, came over to Middle-earth. One early version of her death that Tolkien wrote was at the hands of Yarandil, who was Elrond's dad. I mentioned him in the video about Elrond. But in any case, there was a version originally, I guess, in one of his voyages, he killed Ungoliant, but that was changed so that she was basically the only thing that could kill her was herself. So she was almost like addicted to light, this thing that she hated, but she needed it, and it was her sustenance, and it, made her spin darkness, which would be an absence of light, but then she needed the light. It's a very, metaphorical tale there. So, I just wanted to bring it back around now that I've mentioned the trees and how Ungoliant was responsible for killing them. It just seems fitting that the Phial of Galadriel held the light of those two trees. And so it's that light that blinded Shelob and defeated her in that moment, perhaps leading to her death. We don't know. But her defeat was at the hands of the light of the trees that Ungoliant originally got a lot of her power from consuming. So yeah, there you go. Also, obviously, Cirith Ungol. Ungol is the first part of Ungoliant. There's the spider reference there. Also, we do hear it in the Hobbit movies. In An Unexpected Journey, we've got, I believe it is Radagast mentions when he's in Mirkwood and there's the giant spiders. He says, "Spawn of Ungoliant." Well, that Spawn of Ungoliant line is referring, obviously, to our demonic spirit that is a spider the size of a small football stadium or something. Who knows? So there you go. Shelob and Ungoliant, two creatures you would not want to meet in a dark alley. There you go. Thanks, everybody. If you want to get more videos on this, feel free to subscribe, and we'll be back soon talking about Discovery, talking about American Gods, talking about Umbrella Academy, and I'll be doing more Lord of the Rings. Thanks, everybody. Bye.